Good evening, everyone. We will call the December 17th, 2020 council meeting to order. If we could all try to follow the protocols. We've got a big crowd in here, I know, for some of the service awards, and that's exciting, but we also want everybody to be safe. If you wish to speak during Citizens to be Heard or on another item, if you could just fill out a card for us before coming to the podium, we would appreciate it. I would ask everybody now to stand for the invocation, which I'm going to give this evening, and remain standing for the pledge. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this opportunity to come together in a democracy. We pray that you might just give wisdom and discernment to this council, Lord. It has been a very strange year. A year where we have had social unrest, where we have had political conflict, where we have been living with a pandemic, the likes that we have not seen for over 100 years. Lord, during a time like this, I just pray that we might slow down and be more courteous of our neighbors. Remember what is most important: our faith, our family, and our friends. And Lord, I pray that you might give us the strength and the knowing that we are getting closer and closer to the end, and that we not let our guard down. There have been so many people that have been lost this year, Lord. We pray for them and their families. And so many people who have lost time just together. We've been apart. And as we enter the holidays, I just pray that you might strengthen people, even though they may not be with loved ones as they ordinarily would be at this time. We pray for traveling mercies for those who decide to travel. And I pray a shield of protection around those in hospitals, in law enforcement, first responders, and our soldiers that are overseas. We pray all these things in your heavenly name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, we have some service awards, but I also want to welcome our former mayor, George Creticus, and his lovely wife, Carolyn, who are here for one of those service awards, and we wish them the best in this coming year. If I could have Lisa Perkins come forward from Gas for 30 years of service. Nice fan club, Lisa.
Sorry?
Nice fan club.
Oh, thanks.
Lisa Perkins started in Clearwater Gas System as a temp accounting technician, then hired as a permanent customer service rep on November 26, 1990. In 1997, she transferred to utility customer service and then returned to the gas system in 1999 as LP customer service representative. Lisa continues to coordinate LP service in 20 municipalities and 2 counties in Clearwater Gas System's 330 square mile service territory. She supports LP drivers, field crews, and customers alike. Lisa is the go-to person for all aspects of LP. Twice Lisa has been the City of Clearwater Employee of the Month, and 1 year was presented both City Employee of the Year and Clearwater Gas System Employee of the Year. Lisa continues to represent Clearwater Gas System in various capacities and charitable events, including the city's Achievement Awards Committee, annual food basket drive, and just completed her 15th year chairing the city's United Way Day Week of Caring. She was previous captain for Paint Your Heart Out and the World Changers Project. She is Clearwater Gas System's resident photographer and poet, providing cherished records which document moments in time, both happy and sad, for her co-workers. Lisa's most cherished accomplishment is being mom to her daughter Heather and me mom to her beautiful granddaughter Jordan, and has many amazing pictures chronicling them from infant. Lisa stepped up and took over the suburban billing detail previously handled by the Utility Customer Service Department after the city efficiency study suggested this change. She continues to be our department's expert on suburban software and is our go-to to solve ongoing issues that enable billing without any significant delays. She was recently promoted to Senior Customer Service Representative in October of 2019. In her new position, Lisa has taken on additional responsibilities to help the department. It is employees like Lisa who help to make the city of Clearwater continue to be bright and beautiful from bay to beach. Her kind heart, generous nature, and willingness to always step up to volunteer for causes helps make Clearwater Gas System and the city of Clearwater special for her co-workers and our customers. We are very thankful for Lisa's service to our citizens, so it is very fitting that her 30th anniversary as an employee was on Thanksgiving this year. Our heartfelt thanks to Lisa for 30 years serving the customers of Clearwater Gas System and the citizens of the city of Clearwater. Lisa Perkins.
Ordinarily, we would be giving her the write-up and the gift and shaking hands, but Lisa, obviously not this year. Thank you for all you've done for the city and your passion. Next, if I could have John Leggett from Parks and Recreation, 35 years of service.
John Leggett began his career with the city of Clearwater in December 1985 as a part-time recreation leader at Clearwater Beach Recreation Center. Since that time, John has impacted many lives of various ages in his 35 years with the city. John spent his first 20 years at Clearwater Beach Recreation Center, where he taught tennis lessons, ran flag football, created and ran a Kids Week program, taught swim lessons, and ran summer camps. John helped advocate for the beautiful Clearwater Beach Aquatic Center and held many fishing tournaments, egg hunts, and sandcastle contests in his time at Clearwater Beach. John spent 5 years at Ross Norton Recreation Center working with youth and teens as he spent the last 10 years of his career as a senior recreation coordinator at the Countryside Recreation Center. In his current role, John coordinates and runs a very successful youth basketball league and supervises the center in the absence of the facility manager. John describes himself using words like coach, co-worker, friend, mentor, and leader. His supervisors and co-workers describe John as dependable, kind, funny, and a bit of a prankster. After 35 years, I think the best words we can use are, thank you. Congratulations, John, on your 35 years of exceptional service.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton has a comment.
I want everybody to know, John and I played many hours of basketball with each other in our teenage years at the Beach Rec Center. So we go way back. Go way back.
That is true.
John, it's great to have you as a friend, and thank you for everything you've done.
Appreciate it. It seems like yesterday in a way.
It does. It really does.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you for the years of service. Next, if I could call forward Pete Dunbar, who is our state lobbyist, for a overview of what attractions to come this year and last year. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Dunbar.
Mayor, thank you. Members of the council, nice to be with you tonight. I hope it's okay if I remove my mask. I would normally be joined this evening, as I often am when we make our post and pre-session visits, by Martha Edenfield, who's been a long member of our team, also Angela Bonds, but both of them not traveling, so I think they're observing us remotely. We did not have the opportunity to do a post-session briefing for the council this past year. That being said, however, we have provided on a regular basis the written reports that we have routinely provided over the years. And in addition to that, this year we have made very timely responses by providing the executive orders that have come primarily from the governor and his executive offices to make sure that the city stays current with those as well. Those written reports provide plenty of the details of what happened last session. I want to make mention of a couple of things, though, that were pending last year, were not successful last year, or part of the program draft that you will be considering. And I just simply want to highlight them because I think they will be back again in the 2020 session. The first is vacation rentals. We have been, I think, now into a decade battle to try to resolve that issue. We were successful in making sure that the preemptions that the legislature has addressed, we have exempted Clearwater from, but that resurfaces every year. We do expect it to be back again this year as well. The other matter, too, and I think you are already aware of, your staff is already aware of, there was an initiative last year dealing with wastewater discharge and reuse from our municipal and county and private sewer systems in a long-term effort to provide for reuse and no longer basically send that to Tide. I think there are many things that are consistent with what the long-term objectives of the city might be. The things we are concerned about the most there is that it becomes some type of unfunded mandate, and there is a lot of sensitivity in that regard. As we have done every year and have already begun this year, we coordinate our efforts on some of these larger issues with the Florida League of Cities. That process has already begun for us this year, and I might look forward briefly in that context, and let's take a look at what we expect from the legislature. They are now mostly organized completely. The only thing remaining at this point is the House committee assignments. The Senate President has made all of his assignments, all of his chairmanships are in place. In the House, all chairmanships are in place. We expect that the membership of the individual committees will hopefully come next week prior to Christmas. The environment, Mayor, that you described and your blessing has affected everything, including the interim committee process that the legislature traditionally engages in, and we have had none this year. They will pick up, however, in January, and we'll have it every week during that time frame. One of the interesting dynamics, and I think Council Member Beckman and I were talking about this before we formally convened, the Senate President has announced that there will be no access to committee hearings, to the Capitol, or to individual member offices, except by invitation. We are expecting that either at the Civic Center or one of the remote facilities not had an invitation extended to you. There will be a place for you to be able to do that now. Candidly, I think most of us that are Tallahassee-based, all of this is televised. We have it. It's available over the internet. The bigger issue that all of us will be navigating is the inability to access the process and the members and staff in the process, at least in the Senate, without an invitation. We do not know yet the final protocols that Speaker Sprowls will put in place. We know, though, that his organizational protocols were quite aggressive. So I would expect that the House will mirror what the Senate has done, and that will limit a lot of our access. One of the interesting things that it will include things that the city is interested in is both presiding officers have created select committees or special committees to deal with the overall impacts of the pandemic. Particularly in the House, Representative Sprowls has extended that, or Speaker Sprowls has extended that to include with hurricane emergencies, wind damage, things like that, also focused on the rise of coastal waters as we face global warming. So special committee to deal with those kinds of things, both in the House and the Senate, and that we are interested in. Clearly, the legislature, both bodies will be focused in those areas. The other big focus will be how we deal with the revenue shortfalls. I will tell you candidly, we monitor that quite closely. Most recent reports last week indicate that the shortfalls are not as bad as they were initially anticipated. They are nonetheless pretty significant, and everyone is focused on what that will mean. I think that is both funding to meet some of the special needs that have resulted from the pandemic we find ourselves in, not the least of which might be the coordination of the distribution of vaccines and things like that, depending on what federal funds are available, on down to how do we simply manage the employee benefit programs to the services that are provided. Minimum wage, I think, may become an issue as well. At past and now goes into a cycle that has an impact on subsets of service like folks that are serviced by ARC of Tampa Bay or the other ARC programs around Florida, so something else to be concerned about and where fundings would be needed. As I mentioned, we're concerned about the impacts on the funding, the concerns about the preemptions of home rule as they may surface from time to time. We see them every year also, the short-term rental debate that we're going to have. But honestly, we don't know what we don't know just yet. I was doing a look at the bills that have been filed to date. There are about 112 in both houses. That's a total of what we expect to be about 3,000 by the time they convene on the first Tuesday in March. So we don't know a lot of what is still to come. Some of it is speculated. There is one thing that is in your program, and we have been engaged in it on a two-front effort through Councilman Albritton's efforts. And this deals with the coastal water here. And for several months now, we have dealt with that on two parallel fronts. The first has been to try and make sure that the city has better control over derelict vessels to the mooring areas that we deal with here. And I think Mike Smith has been in direct interface now with Major Rowe, who is head of boating and waterway safety at FWC, and Brandy Elliott, who is Assistant General Counsel, and there is a mechanism to take the authority that they have already and make it available and useful here by transferring it locally. So with City Attorney, with Mike Smith, with Ed Chesney, I think that's well underway, and we'll assume that's moving forward. Prospectively, too, one of the things that we've put on the concern list is the discharge from vessels. And the Fish and Wildlife has, when we began this engagement several months ago, they have been working on legislation that will deal with derelict vessels, will deal with making all of Florida waters a new discharge zone, and a number of other things extremely beneficial. We have attended, Angela, Martha, and I have attended all of those workshops that have been held. We do expect that. We have drafts of the legislation that hasn't been formally filed and numbered yet. We do know from an outreach earlier in the week that the bill will be handled by Senator Hudson. He is a senior member of the Florida Senate, very effective member from the St. Augustine area. The House sponsor will be Representative Soroy. He's from Brevard County over on the East Coast, and those will be our two sponsors. So we're very hopeful that we'll step up in support. Mayor, that's my pre-session and sort of post-session report, and I will stop here because I know time is an issue, but I'm happy to respond to any questions that
We're here until we finish, so.
Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Dunbar? Councilmember Beckman?
I have a question about the proposed legislation to make all Florida waters a no discharge zone. Has that legislation been attempted before?
No.
Never?
No. And it's interesting, this is a little bit more than a direct response to your question, but the issues that we've experienced here are being experienced in other locations. And trying to create, at least as the FWC sees it, just this area is okay and this area is not okay, better that we do it across the board, one. And with it, there is the pump out zones or facilities that are now an expectation in permitting from DEP, also with the licensure from FWC. And one of the things that's delayed the final version of this legislation is making sure that the Florida Department of Environmental Protection also was supportive, and that's now occurred as well. So no, it hasn't been fully vetted this way before, and there are some voting interests that don't think it's such a good idea. This is not a piece of legislation that I expect will necessarily go smoothly based on the workshops I was in and the comments that some folks made with regard to it.
Can you just share with me one or two reasons why somebody would be opposed to a no discharge in our waters?
I am very much in favor of no discharge in our water, so I'm not sure I can articulate what is a good reason not to. Some of the concerns that were expressed by others are that there aren't enough pump-out places in many circumstances. There are times in cases of emergency where you may not be able to get to one. Personally, in listening to that kind of debate, I didn't find their points of view particularly persuasive, but we'll see where that goes when we get into the more formal hearings, because we'll probably be appearing from afar unless we get invited so that we can express.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I've been involved with this for a while, and I know there's a very strong voting community that, you know, wants their rights and everything. And when we talk about pumping, to us as normal, we think, oh, why shouldn't that be? You know, but they have, and I've heard this before, they point to the landlubbers going, well, you fertilize your yard and it runs off into the water. That's their argument to balance out what they're doing, man. So I've heard that before. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I think what's being addressed now everywhere makes sense.
I think yes, and I think it's very positive that Florida's two lead regulatory and agencies in this arena are both in favor of it. So I think that bodes well for getting past the arguments that you and I have heard.
Other questions? Councilmember Hamilton.
I mean, you know, one of the things we've talked about, Pete, you know, when we're doing our Imagine Clearwater, and it's great to see you, by the way.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We go way back.
Yes, sir, we do.
But when we're talking about our Imagine Clearwater and our new band shell and concert venue, we've had discussions. You know, being able to have local control over allowing open carry in that venue, because there are certain promoters who represent the type of acts and many acts that we might be very happy having in our venue. That promoter will not bring them here if we allow open carry on site during the concert. So what do you think the chances are of getting an exemption where we can control during a concert saying we're not going to allow open carry onto the premises?
Well, I know that's one of the priorities that's in the draft, and we haven't started a direct outreach on that yet. One of the pieces of legislation that's been filed was one of the 112, is one that expands open carry back to the university system and schools. When you deal in this arena, we are at the extremes. One of those strategies that we have seen in recent years is nothing moves to help either extreme, because once it gets into the process, it becomes a vehicle to add on to or not add on to. And quite honestly, it's something we're going to have to follow up on for you to find out how potentially viable it is, what things might be moving along to do it. And, between Representative Sigley and Senator Hooper, Representative Sprouse, as Representative Latvala, we have some folks around here who are well positioned, and the question is there a vehicle or is there an opportunity to try to get that done? And I don't know the answer to it yet, although I know it is a very difficult area to wade into.
Vice Mayor.
Would that be better as a local bill, or is that be more general than that?
Councilman Albritton, that's an interesting thought. Let us look into that. There are limits on what local bills can do, but because we're talking about something site-specific, that may very well be a possibility. I guess we don't allow merry-go-rounds and things. We have dealt with our local bills that date back to 1926 out to Island Estates and things. That's a good point, and I will look into that in more detail.
We have also heard that the Fed and FEMA are talking about changing how emergency aid is administered. We just heard that today. And I was curious if you've heard anything and how the state might handle that. I know it's early in the process, but.
I have not. The most recent rumor FEMA related that sort of hit our desks this week is that our current director of emergency management is a likely candidate to move to Washington and take over at FEMA. We'll see if that happens or not, but Jared has done a very good job here. By profession, that is the background of dealing with emergencies that he was in. I think it would be good for Florida generally, and it would be the second time that a president has turned to Florida for someone to manage FEMA. But no, I haven't heard anything about the funding changes or anything of that nature yet. No.
Okay. We are going to be talking more formally later in the agenda about our legislative agenda. We've received a lot of emails just today from different constituency groups. And my question to you, so I'll bury the lead with the rest of the council. Do you think we will be okay if we push that off to the first? We only have one meeting in January, but until January.
The answer is yes. As I mentioned, we don't know a lot of the details yet. The details that are priorities for the city that we do know about is we want to continue to work with FWC. That's in the program.
Right.
And that's already underway. Funding is something that I know you're looking at, and we have a little bit of time to try and get that done, although funding this year is a pretty difficult uphill battle. But more importantly is I assume, as we have always done, and you have always directed us to be consistent with the policies of the Florida League of Cities, and we're already well into that. Their policies really, for the specifics, mirror where we want to be. And to the extent things surface quickly before your January meeting, I think we're well equipped to deal with it.
Well, and staff can work on some of that groundwork, but I mean, I always believe a lot of the work gets done before our legislators get to Tallahassee, because once they're there, they're in the mania. So I prefer talking to them before they leave. Always welcoming
so
them.
on the money. It is always good to do that. And I know, turning the clock all the way back to when I, held a legislative seat, the effective communications happen if you want to have that dialogue before the session begins, because once that happens, notwithstanding the fact that you can't even go in now without an invitation, is you're at a little bit different pace when you're dealing locally. So you're absolutely right about that.
Okay. Other questions from Mr. Dunbar? Comments? Thank you very much.
It
I
was
know
my
how
pleasure to
well
be
you
here. It's
represent
finally
us
glad
up
to
there.
be on the road once again. I hope everyone has fabulous holidays, and we'll obviously be in consistent touch.
We'll travel safely
Thank
on the
you.
way back and give Martha
Thank you.
our very best.
I will do that. Thank
Happy
you.
holidays. I was remiss in not identifying the dais and introducing, so on my far right is City Manager Bill Horn.
Good evening.
Councilmember Bunker. Good evening. Councilmember Hamilton.
Good evening.
Vice Mayor Albritton. Hello. Councilmember Beckman.
Good evening.
And our illustrious attorney, Pam Ake.
Good evening.
With that, we have a presentation by Sarah Kessler from our Environmental Advisory Board. Some other Environmental Advisory Board members, so good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I would just like to introduce the Environmental Advisory Board Chair. I'm the staff liaison for the Environmental Advisory Board. So Jared Leone is going to give a little summary about what the board has been up to. And then we also have John Thomas from our board, and Glenna Wentworth is also from our board here tonight.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. Despite the challenges this year brought on by an unprecedented pandemic, the Environmental Advisory Board was able to continue its work providing insight to city leaders and staff on critical issues of environmental importance that impact the city of Clearwater. In a typical year, our board meets 4 times. Because of the spread of the coronavirus, our engaged group was limited to meeting twice, first in January and later in October. But because of the groundwork laid in previous years and the diligence of our board, we still are able to share accomplishments with you. Our work previously resurrecting Greenprint, the city's sustainability coordinator last year, who has spent much of this year updating and implementing key strategies, including reducing greenhouse gases, creating a stronger partnership with environmentally focused groups, and developing an educational environmental programs. In October, our board had a robust discussion on the contentious development plan on the site of the Landings Golf Course, culminating in a letter to city leaders indicating our opposition to the industrial development. We asked then, and I will again ask City Council tonight, to consider a permanent change from its use as a golf course to an open space park in an effort to increase the city's green space footprint. The city's diversity of parks and green space is an asset that we should prioritize saving, and we should prioritize saving undeveloped swaths of land in the state's most densely populated county. Also in October, we drafted a resolution urging city leaders to develop a formalized process that would include advisory board input on projects deemed appropriate by staff. We have the opinion that as resiliency, sustainability, and quality of life issues related to the environment continue to impact our community, the Environmental Advisory Board, as well as other advisory boards, should be considered a valuable partner as projects, plans, and initiatives move forward. This council discussed session. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. Our board looks forward to the possibilities in 2021 and how we can continue to contribute to make Clearwater bright and beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Can we ask any questions of them or comments or anything?
We have a question.
Oh, yes, sir.
I got some questions. So, well, first of all, thank you for your service. You all are my favorite board, one of my favorite boards. I believe that, you know, the decisions we make up here, about 90% of them, involve some kind of impact or consequence to our environment. So, you know, aside from foreclosure decisions and things like that. So I fully support your resolution for a process that includes advisory board input on relevant, the second attachment here. But I had a question about the 60% at the 60% threshold. Why did you choose the 60% threshold?
That was based on board discussion with staff, and staff felt that was an appropriate number.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for Sarah if that's incorrect, but I believe that's where we come with that, is from our discussions at that time.
Okay.
I believe we actually voted on 30% plans.
Come on, could you come up closer to the microphone so people can hear you at home? And just identify yourself for the record.
John Thomas, Vice Chairman of the Environmental Advisory Board, a resident on Sandkey. I believe at our October meeting, we did vote on a recommendation of 30% plans would be appropriate, feeling that the 60% plans, the project's a little too far along. And at that point, it's really the technical details that's more appropriate for the staff. Because that 30% is schematic design, is the term used in the design industry. There's enough information there. The major aspects of a plan and its impact on the environment from the whole variety of issues, whether it's water quality, traffic, noise, impact on wetlands or waterways and how they're used, can be understood at that early stage and make appropriate decisions. Also, with regards to the sustainability issues of LEED and whether a project is appropriate to move forward with the LEED level. So I think those decisions are best made at a 30% stage and would be better serving our input to the City Council and the staff.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
And then you have experience with that, right? I mean, your professional experience is all that kind of.
40 years' worth of consulting as an environmental professional.
Okay. So this is my first interaction with advisory boards since I've been elected here. So do you all normally give like an annual update, or was this was the annual update? Okay. So I had, Mr. Leon, Jared, your friend.
Yes.
Jared, do you set the agenda for the meetings?
It's something that's discussed and cities and the staff, and that's how our agendas are set typically.
Okay. And do you feel like you meet a decent amount of time? Would you like to meet more frequently? Do you feel like you're doing the work you want to do? Are you happy with being on the board? Would you like to see some
I'm extremely
changes?
pleased with the work we're doing on our board, and if we need to meet more, I think we're flexible to do that. If we need to meet less, we're able to do that too. I think as right now with what we've been doing, we've met an appropriate amount of time, but if there were, other things, we might have to, meet more frequently, but at this point, I feel like at least I've been on the board for 4 or 5 years now, so, and we've discussed meeting time and frequency quite a few times throughout that time, and we still maintain our 4 meetings a year, so.
Okay.
Any other?
Well, I'm thinking, I know that there was some discussion about whether or not the Environmental Advisory Board, the Parks and Rec Board, or the Air Park Marine Advisory Board should have been consulted or engaged with discussions about the landings referendum. Do you think that you should have been?
Sure, we were able to meet shortly before the vote, but yeah, that's something that we could have, I think our board could have met at an earlier time. But, I think that's something that something that had been discussed for quite a long time before it came out. So at some point, I think that's what we've talked about before in terms of when things are at an early stage in their discussion, that they could come before different boards at that time before
Okay.
they go out, so.
And even things like the Imagine Clearwater Park?
Yeah, there's a number, like we said, projects that are deemed appropriate by staff and city council. So whether it's Imagine Clearwater, or the landings, or any number of things that may come up or have come up, but, I don't think it's for us to say which exact, projects, but for staff and city council, to bring them for us.
So you want that direction from staff and city council about what to be involved with?
Well, I think to a certain degree we've had that,
Okay.
and we've also been able to contribute what we feel are important as well from what we hear in the community and bring to the board,
Okay,
so.
that seems like a good balance. Just wanted to make sure that was how you were operating and you guys were happy with it, and
Certainly. And yeah, the only reason we've mentioned as far as the work with advisory boards is just for the community to know what's going on as far as, sometimes projects are worked on for a long time at the staff level before they come out and public has any opportunity to know what's happening. So, it's just maybe another layer of transparency. So.
okay. And then what do we do about their resolution, their proposed resolution? Do we address that tonight or talk about it?
We can agenda it for a future meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, my understanding is we were going to discuss more at our meeting in January moving forward, and then at some point that'll come back for council.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you again.
Jared, you don't have your furry friend with you?
No, I have them on my socks. 3 of them on there, so they're all at home now.
Okay.
Well, have a nice
All right,
holiday.
Have a good night.
Thank you all.
Happy holidays.
All right, I would ask if there are any amendments to the minutes of the December 3rd, 2020 meeting.
Move approval of the minutes as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. At this time, I want to open it up to citizens to be heard. If you're here to speak to anything that is not on the agenda, we ask you to come forward. And hopefully you've filled out a card. If you haven't, please do. And we respectfully ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Please, you can fill it out after, if you'll state your name for the record.
My name is Emmanuel McCrellis. I live at 1536 Palmetto Street in Clearwater, Florida. My house had a demo done to it in October, and I was in Springfield, Missouri at the time during this thing that went on. I was just wondering if there was a notice of publication in was a newspaper or anything of the demo proceedings.
You mean your property was condemned and
It was,
demolished?
yes, it was a case number 161-18.
161-18.
Yes, and
Okay.
the city took it upon themselves without a court order from a judge and demoed the property. And I had found out about like a week before that the state wasn't going to come in with the program to fix the house. So immediately I would have fixed the house and did the demo, but nobody gave me a notice or a courtesy call to tell me that, you know what, we need to demo your house and so, to put it down. I didn't get a judge's order or anything. There was a lack of communication link. I'm requesting the city if they could reduce the demo costs because it was $18,125.
Okay, you have me at
I
a disadvantage, I will
I was
tell you.
dumbfounded myself when this
we
happened.
have the number, if you could fill out the card
Right,
so that we can get your contact information.
all right.
Then the staff will look into it.
I know this is a totally different staff from what I usually see.
It's fine. That's what we're here for.
All right,
But if you'll give us the information, then
Yes.
staff will get back to you and respond to the
I'm saying in
situation.
future processes, like when you're demoing a property, I would suggest the idea, go through a court proceedings and request a judge to demo the property, not to go above and beyond the judge and demo the property. Do you understand?
Ms. Aiken, do you
I
want to
mean-
weigh in?
We do have an established process. I am not familiar with your
Neither
case.
am I.
But it does not require that we go to a court. There is due process given, but it does not require a judge to authorize that.
There was close to a lot of items that were in the house that I lost. 2 businesses now. The post office box that was sitting at the end of the street was removed as well, so I'm not getting any of my business now. So there's no taxes or whatever.
And I understand,
Can I,
the confusion.
can I
But I
put my,
can't resolve it here
can I
tonight.
put my P.O. box back up?
You're going to have to work with the department.
Because I've already filed a federal offense on whoever removed the P.O. box. They're doing a postal investigation because I'm not receiving any type of mail.
Give us the information and we will have somebody get with you
Thank you.
tomorrow, okay? Thank you for coming out.
Mr. Mayor and City Council people and Mr. Horn. My name is Jerry Collins. I live at 2325 Harn Boulevard in beautiful Morningside Estates. Been there for 35 years. I'm a little concerned about what's going to be happening on Highway 19 at Harn, which is the FDOT has proposed a
Pedestrian crossing.
pedestrian overpass. Okay, and I understand that they're going to be footing most of the bill. However, I know the city's already kicked in a few things. So they came up with a proposal which included elevators at both ends, and the council nixed that because you would have to assume the responsibility of maintenance after the construction was done. So then the FDOT came back at you and said, well, we could do a ADA compliant ramp. And that's where it stands right now, that they're redoing that process. However, with the ADA compliant ramp, we need more space. And so you gave away right-of-way of Harn to the FDOT so that they would have the space to build the ramp. And so that's going to restrict Harn Boulevard. You also gave away several things that had to be done. Let's see, there was a, excuse me a second. You know, I thought I had this all put together. There was first I believe it was the reclaimed water line had to be replaced, had to be moved in order to accommodate this thing. So you guys I believe it was May, authorized some monies in order to do that. Then in the next month, they came back with the fact that there is a natural gas line that has to be redone also for the same reason in order to do that. So you also allotted funds for that. We have a situation on Harn Boulevard, where Harn Boulevard is going to be stripped down to the very bare nubs between the rec center and Highway 19 is going to be going on at the same time. We also have a brand-new 350-unit housing project that is going to be opening up, and that's going to add somewhere between 400 to 450 new automobiles every day at that same spot. So what I'm asking is can you please get with the FDOT and ask them to postpone this until we can do a study? There was a study that was done on the number of pedestrians that crossed at Harn Boulevard 19. And that was done prior to the construction of Highway 19 when they made the decision to not have a flyover Harn or a flyover Nursery. That would be closed off and there would be just frontage roads. But that has to be, I believe, back in 2004, 2005. So it's been a good 15 years since that study was done.
If you could wrap it up, Mr. Collins.
Okay, if you could please, I would really like if you could get with them and maybe postpone it until a new study can be made. We have a lot of information from the overpass at Enterprise up in Clearwater. They could give us whether this thing is actually going to be used or not.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And you and
for
I
your
have
time.
exchanged some emails, and if you
Right.
want to put everything that you could not complete tonight into an email, then we'll
Great.
address it.
Thank you. And if you
Just
As
send
you-
it to the vice mayor, because
Okay.
I'm
All right.
not a commissioner.
All right, Mr. Albritton, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
Hello,
Good evening.
my name is Larry Polnicki, and I live in Countryside. I've lived there for 5 years, and I love it. I love Clearwater, I love this area. And I had two issues that I've been grappling with for these 4 or 5 years, and I didn't really know where to turn. So I wrote an email to the mayor, and he said, come for the 3-minute speak. And I got two issues I'm going to try to go pretty quickly on. The first one is the animal has a procedure to handle barking dogs. And I have a neighbor who has 2 dogs, and they bark a lot. And in Countryside, the way our houses are situated, they're kind of next to each other with a kind of a corridor in between. And literally, the dogs are barking 8 or 10 feet outside my window. But because of the way the houses are situated, none of the other neighbors hear it because they're blocked. And the procedure currently, which I've tried to follow with animal services, is you have to get an affidavit, you have to get it notarized, you have to have 2 distinct homes and homeowners file these affidavits. And it's been difficult because my other neighbors are either afraid of the neighbor, this one with the dog, or they just don't, they can't honestly say it's bothering them. So what for this issue, I do have a bit of a suggestion that perhaps you can change the procedure so that if an animal services person or a police officer comes out and makes an observation, they can substitute that as the second affidavit. I already had a police officer come out. He made an observation, had a great, I wish I got his name. He was a wonderful police officer. He said, yes, this is not really good, but he couldn't do anything about it. And then Animal Services said the same thing. They couldn't do anything about it. And I completely support the procedure. I totally understand. You don't want to have one neighbor just making trouble for another neighbor for some other reason. So the idea of having 2 affidavits makes sense, but there needs to be some sort of exception or alternate procedure when you have an unusual situation. One issue that I've been dealing with that I hope there's some possible solution for. The second issue, coincidentally today when I came out, this was on my driveway.
I did call the publisher on your behalf.
Yeah,
But
and, well, here's the thing, I can't believe you haven't heard this issue before,
We
okay?
have.
These go in the storm drains, they collect, okay, I'm not paranoid, but my study is that on plastic, COVID can last for 72 hours. These things are littered all over the city. And I looked up the ordinance on litter, and it clearly is a violation. There's no carve out here for publishers, there's not, I mean, I'm sorry, maybe I'm just a layperson, but it says, if you do this, I don't think if I came to your house and threw this on your lawn every week, you'd like it. But yet, these guys do it, and I'm sorry, I understand the publishers provide maybe a service to the community, but it's getting to be a little bit ridiculous when I go down my street and I see these on every lawn, soaking wet, in the storm drains. And my main objection, I've called them, I've tried to work with them, I've sent them invoices for cleanup, they ignore me, and it'll stop for a couple weeks, and then I'll stop. It'll stop for a couple weeks. Yeah, it'll stop for a couple weeks, and then it starts again every time they get a new carrier. I don't have a good solution, but it just seems to me that we have rules and laws for a reason, and that nobody should just be able to ignore it. I don't know what the arrangement is with the publisher. Maybe they have some special compensation. I don't know, but that's just an issue I like to deal with.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Pam, do you want to speak to the policy? Are you familiar with it on the dogs?
Oh, on the dogs, I believe that's the
Is that a county?
That would be the county, I believe.
All right. You want to talk about the papers?
We will take a look at that. We have looked at it in the past, and it's constitutionally protected because it's First Amendment speech. Have not updated that research in a number of years. If you would like us to update that research, we will. But it is considered protected speech. But we can update the research if you'd like.
Okay. Councilmember Beckham?
What if we did something like, because I'm sure you all too, I've heard that complaint over and over again, and I see it, when I'm in neighborhoods. But what if we gave that publisher, what if we said, look, you've got 6 months, you put in every issue, we're going to have a termination date of, let's say it's April or May, unless you opt in. And so the people that do pick up that newspaper and read it would read that, oh, I better text them or email them and let them know I want to opt in. And then they've chosen to have that newspaper thrown on their driveway. Give them a nice big window to get their message out there. But, I get free speech and the press and all that and the importance of the press, but it seems like it's a trespassing litter on my property that's
Well, no, I have neighbors
contracted
that,
with.
get the paper and it gets soaking wet and it sits there. Ultimately, I pick it up.
Yeah.
Because I know they don't want to read it. I leave it for a day in case they decide they want to pick it up. We happen to get it on Thursday, so it normally goes in the recycling bin before our Friday pickup. But, Pam, it does come down still to the free
Yes,
speech. So
it does.
we couldn't, I think you can research it. Have one of your attorneys
We
research
will
it.
take a look at it. We will update the research. I can tell you from our old research, you cannot do that. We can take a look to see if there's been any changes in the case law. Newspapers have a lot of protection,
Just like railroads.
just like railroads.
And they want to put them out at every door because then they call it circulation,
Yes.
which then is the basis for their ad revenue. So, okay. We will look into it. I've got your email. So we'll circle back around with the research that we get. Okay? Anyone else for citizens to be heard? Oh, you have one. Go ahead, Ms. Cole.
One comment was submitted by Deb Larkin. Dear Mayor Hibbert and council members, don't you just love where you live where you love? I do. And I also like our city's name, Clearwater. Let's work to keep it clear and clean by going green. Our neighboring city, Dunedin, has already adopted green building certification in September 2019. I would like Clearwater to adopt a similar certification requiring green building standards on city-owned properties. As I'm sure you all are aware, our stormwater infrastructure has been deteriorating due to age, seeing more stormwater infrastructure failures every month. Green building certification will minimize the strain on Clearwater stormwater. Enough to storm sewer from development is just one part of going green. Creating buildings or renovating buildings using green building standards or LEED apps. Leadership in energy and environmental design accredited professionals is the other. Please take the time to consider the above, and I thank you for this consideration. Another comment was submitted by Ivana, I'm going to mispronounce this, Kachevich. Hello, I live on Johns Parkway in Clearwater. 2 months ago, I emailed the City Council and the Mayor's office and have submitted an inquiry through Acela. I have not heard back from anyone in the government, other than an acknowledgement that my submission has been received. Our road is perpendicular to Bayshore Boulevard and McMullen Booth Road. There are so many issues with our street, but mostly the asphalt has reached the end of its useful life. As you can see from the picture, there are gigantic potholes still there as I type, only bigger than this picture, as well as various chunks breaking off, mud sliding down the street with every rain, and each time it rains, there are new holes popping up. I only submit one photo as the website won't allow for multiple photos, but this is what the entire street looks like. To make matters worse, the street is very, very narrow. People think it is a one-way street. During rush hour, cars cut through our street to avoid being stuck on McMullen Booth Road. They speed down the street despite the 25 mile per hour.
To a greater degree than other projects. This is already in place. Staff evaluates projects to ensure they meet the definition of affordable housing or workforce housing, and we sign a form that a developer submits with their application, and that requires that their application is given top priority when review time comes. The modification of impact fee requirements, including a reduction, waiver of fees, and alternate methods of payment for affordable housing. The AHAC recommended we conduct a study to see what our flexibility, what our latitude is with impact fees. There are 3 departments that collect impact fees in the city. I think an analysis will determine a very wide range of flexibility with each. They'll be very different with each, and I think we're going to be very limited. I'll probably start that analysis with the City Attorney's Office, and I'll have that done by the time the AHAC convenes again in the fall. Number 3, the allowance of flexibility in densities for affordable housing. This is already in place. Our code allows a density bonus of anywhere from 20 to 50% if there is a component of affordable or workforce housing in the project. Next, the reservation of infrastructure capacity for low to moderate income persons. There was no recommendation with this item. The city's infrastructure was not identified as a barrier to affordable housing. The city is very built out. Infrastructure is predominantly in place already. The allowance of affordable accessory residential units in residential zoning districts. We covered this a bit on Monday. This is something that will be given strong consideration during the development of the city's comprehensive plan. The reduction of parking and setback requirements for affordable housing. This is already provided for by our code. The allowance of flexible lot configurations, including 0 lot line configurations for affordable housing. This is already provided for by our code. Modification of street requirements for affordable housing. No recommendation here. Our street grid is very well built out. It was not identified as a barrier to affordable housing. The establishment of a process by which a local government considers before adoption policies, procedures, ordinances, regulations, or plan provisions that increase the cost of housing. This is already in place. The Economic Development and Housing Department works very closely with the Planning and Development Department on any plan developments, any plan amendments. As far as policies and procedures and ordinances, those are all vetted at the senior executive team meetings. Denise Sanderson, our department director, attends those meetings. I attend them in her absence. We review these policies and procedures against the work we do in our department, so that is already in place. The preparation of a printed inventory of locally owned public lands suitable for affordable housing. This is already in place. It's a statutory requirement. Council approves a list of city-owned properties every 3 years, and sometimes more frequently if the city takes ownership of a number of parcels between updates. And lastly, the support of development near transportation hubs and major employment centers and mixed-use development. This is already provided for by our code. The AHAC also has the flexibility to make recommendations outside of the required areas, and they addressed 5 areas. One was adaptive reuse. An example of adaptive reuse project is, say, converting a former school to housing. The recommendation was that the city should continue to allow adaptive reuse projects where currently allowed by code. They talked about the Land Development Code. Section 3-920 of our code addresses affordable housing. The committee reviewed this section and recommended no changes to this section. They talked about marketing. The AHAC recommended we make some changes to the Housing Division webpage. I have to agree, we can do a better job in the presentation of some of the information that we want developers to receive. I'll be working with the Public Communications Department on some of the changes to our webpage. The AHAC discussed finance as it relates to our funding sources. The committee recommended we increase our subsidy in our down payment assistance program using state and federal funds. We'll give this strong consideration as we create our 3-year local housing assistance plan over the next few months. There's, as of late, the amount that the buyers are getting pre-approved for a first mortgage, and the price of these homes, that gap is widening. Our down payment assistance isn't really covering that gap, so we need to address that with our next LHAP, and we will do that. And lastly, they talked about partnerships. The committee addressed the importance of partnerships. I couldn't agree more. We can't do this alone. We continuously look to partner with other local governments, nonprofits, and for-profit developers. Partnerships and relationships are always the core of what we do every day. So that's a quick summary of the recommendations in this report. At the staff level, we don't see any of these recommendations as particularly onerous. As you can see, many of the recommended actions are already in place. Many of these recommendations do call for staff action, but none call for unbudgeted expenses to be funded by the general fund. Results from the study on impact fees and permit fees could potentially call for some expenditures, but many of these costs may be eligible under our state and federal funding programs for housing. So following approval of this item, the work of the 2020 AHAC will be complete. I'll ask council to sunset the committee at our January meeting, and we'll reconvene the committee in the fall per state statute. So I'll take questions at this time, please.
Any questions for Ms. Lane? Mr. Lane, excuse me.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sleep deprived right now. Councilmember Beck.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I know, looking at housing is it's a challenge, and it's something that's real important to me, and I appreciate all the work that you do. And as I'm learning, what a patchwork of organizations and funding sources and incentives and things like that it takes to really make change. But I wanted to say that I'm also part of the continuum of care, which works specifically for the homeless. And I'm excited because there's this it seems like there's this momentum with the county and Forward Pinellas in really addressing the complexity of our lack of affordable housing and what we can do with different government entities. And they had 5 different webinars over the last, I think it's been 2 months or so, that dealt with different aspects of the challenges of affordable housing, and they were phenomenal. And they've put together this compact that I think is real hopeful. It's the Advantage. I've got it here on my thing. So it's the Advantage Pinellas Housing Compact, which reads, housing costs in Pinellas County are rising significantly faster than household incomes. Nearly 1 in 5 households in Pinellas County is cost burdened, spending more than 30% of its income on housing. Pinellas County will need an increase of nearly 1,000 affordable housing units per year this decade just to keep pace with population growth, but fewer than 600 are built in an average year. So this isn't just a Clearwater problem, right? And it's going to take a full head-on effort, and I appreciate all the work that you do, and our neighborhood affordable housing group as well. So it'll be good to see what progress we make on these initiatives and how we can galvanize support in the community to address the seriousness of this problem. So I enjoy what you do. I think you need more staff, I think we need more staff there.
Well, we really need more resources. That's the challenge. And this has been a challenge for decades. And it goes in cycles where we got a lot more affordable in 2009. But it was a huge problem back in 05, 06, 07, and then we had the Great Recession and things got a little bit better as far as the prices of homes, and now we've gone through another upcycle, but it's going to continue to be an issue. And we hope the state, does not raid the Sadowski Fund, because that's always one of the issues. Vice Mayor?
Right. Just looking through the document, I like the recommendation on adaptive reuse. I think of properties is very good. And also, I know we talked about before, maybe some projects and something in our code that would allow smaller lot sizes, because it seems to be a lot of times that drives the price up, is, the land first and what you're building on it. But we were talking about the small homes, doing something like that, which would be more affordable. But you'd have to do something with the zoning to create a smaller lot size in a certain area to make that work.
There's a lot of lots in the North Greenwood neighborhood that are 40 by 90 feet. Those are about the smallest lots we have in the city. And really everything east of MLK, north of Palmetto, up to Cherry Harris Park, those are all 40 by 90 foot lots. And that's a bit of a challenge to put a traditional house on those lots.
Right.
I was up in Pensacola one time. We were trying to recruit a company to come down here. And one of the reasons is because they were very, not only involved with their primary business, but they were also involved with housing. And they were doing urban design, where they were using shared driveways, and they were using a community park and pool so that every house used a lot of these amenities. And it took up a lot less land. They were doing 2-story again so that the footprint was smaller. We unfortunately did not land them back then, but there were some really good ideas. And the gentleman who's the CEO of that company is still there. It would be worth looking into.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? We have accept the report.
I make a motion to accept the 2020 LHIS report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 8.2.
Approve the annexation initial future land use map designation of residential urban RU and initial zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential LMDR district for 1266 Sediva Circle North, and pass ordinances 9416-21, 9417-21, 9418-21 on first reading. Ms. Clayton.
Good evening, Gina Clayton, Planning and Development. This is a single-family home, and the owners are seeking annexation in order to receive sanitary sewer and solid waste service. The property is eligible for annexation. It's surrounded by the city on all sides, so it will eliminate an enclave. The applicant has paid all the necessary impact fees and need to extend the system. The property will be designated residential urban on the future land use map and zoned low medium density residential. We're recommending approval as it is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Any questions for Ms. Clayton? Anyone from the public to speak to item 8.2? Have a motion?
Move to pass item 8.2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Ms. Aiken?
Ordinance number 9416-21, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, annexing certain real property located on the north side of Sediva Circle North, approximately 380 feet west of North Betty Lane. His post office address is 1266 Sediva Circle North, Clearwater, Florida 33755, into the corporate limits of the city and redefining the boundary lines of the city to include said addition, providing an effective date.
I move to pass ordinance 9416-21 on first reading.
Second.
Anyone from the public to speak to the ordinance? Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Ms.
Ordinance
Aiken?
number 9417-21, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the future land use element of the comprehensive plan of the city to designate the land use for certain real property located on the north side of Sediva Circle North, approximately 380 feet west of North Betty Lane. His post office address is 1266 Sediva Circle North, Clearwater, Florida 33755, upon annexation into the city of Clearwater as residential urban RU, providing an effective date.
Anyone from the public to speak to this ordinance? A motion?
I move to pass ordinance 9417-21 on the first reading.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Ordinance number 9418-21, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning atlas of the city by zoning certain real property located on the north side of City of a Circle North, approximately 380 feet west of North Betty Lane. This post office address is 1266 City of a Circle North, Clearwater, Florida 33755, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as low-medium density residential, LMDR, providing an effective date.
Anyone to speak to this ordinance? Motion?
Make a motion to approve ordinance 9418-21 on first reading.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Item 8.3.
Approve the annexation, initial future land use map designation of US 19 Regional Center, and initial zoning atlas designation of US 19 District for a portion of 2970 Gulf to Bay Boulevard, and pass ordinances 9422-21, 9423-21, and 9424-21 on first reading. Ms. Clayton again.
This property is located on the north side of Gulf to Bay Boulevard. It's just west of Bayview, and you may know it. It's a former site for a fireworks store. The request is to annex a very small slither of property that somehow didn't make it into the city, I think, when it was annexed years ago. So this property is already receiving service because of the property it will be joined with. We have a pending application, and that's the reason why we need to annex the property. It will be designated US 19 Regional Center on the future land use map and zoned US 19. We're recommending approval.
Any questions for Ms. Clayton? What is it going to be?
They're renovating the building that's there, I think a Dunkin' Donuts and maybe 2 other uses.
Yeah, because they've gutted it. So it's,
Yeah.
okay,
Right, it's going to be, obviously, they need it for the parking in the back.
right. Anyone to speak to item 8.3? Have a motion?
Move to pass item 8.3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Ms. Sankey.
Ordinance number 9422-21, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, annexing a portion of real property located on the north side of Gulf to Bay Boulevard, approximately 280 feet west of Bayview Avenue. This post office address is 2970 Gulf to Bay Boulevard, Clearwater, Florida 33759, into the corporate limits of the city and redefining the boundary lines of the city to include said addition, providing an effective date.
Anyone speak to this ordinance? A motion?
I move that we pass ordinance 9422-21 on first reading.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous.
Ordinance number 9423-21, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the future land use element of the comprehensive plan of the city to designate the land use for a portion of real property located on the north side of Gulf to Bay Boulevard, approximately 280 feet west of Bayview Avenue, whose post office address is 2970 Gulf to Bay Boulevard, Clearwater, Florida 33759, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as US 19 Regional Center, US 19 RC, providing an effective date.
Anyone to speak to this ordinance? Motion?
Move to pass ordinance 9423-21 on first reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Ordinance number 9424-21, an ordinance of the City of Clearwater, Florida, amending the zoning atlas of the city by zoning a portion of real property located on the north side of Gulf to Bay Boulevard, approximately 280 feet west of Bayview Avenue, whose post office address is 2970 Gulf to Bay Boulevard, Clearwater, Florida 33759, upon annexation into the City of Clearwater as US 19, providing an effective date.
Anyone to speak to this ordinance? Motion?
Motion to approve ordinance 94.
Resolution number 20-63, confirmation of COVID-19 emergency proclamation, December 17th, 2020. A resolution of the City of Clearwater, Florida, confirming declarations of a state of emergency, providing an effective date.
Move to adopt resolution 20-63.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 9.2.
Accept a 10-foot utility easement from 1990 North McMullen Booth Road LLC for the construction, installation, and maintenance of the city utility facilities on real property located at 3055 Union Street, and adopt resolution 20-59. Ms. Kivett.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tara Kivett, Engineering Director. This utility easement will allow the city to construct underground utilities on this site. Any questions?
Any questions? Anyone from the public to speak to item 9.2? A motion?
I move to approve agenda item 9.2.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Ms. Aiken?
Resolution number 20-59, a resolution of the City of Clearwater, Florida, accepting a 10-foot utility easement from 1990 North McMullen Booth Road, LLC, for the construction, installation, and maintenance of city utility facilities, providing an effective date.
Anyone to speak to the resolution? Motion?
Motion to adopt resolution 20-59.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 9.3. Ms. Call.
Approve the 2021 state legislative agenda. Council members, per your direction at the work session, I have provided an updated legislative agenda. I have added the following statements under issues to support. Provide an additional exemption for concealed weapons or firearms for ticketed concert events on public property. Provide intergovernmental coordination that supports sustainability and resiliency efforts at the county municipal levels. And expand Medicaid eligibility requirements to include household incomes up to 138% of the federal poverty level. I have also added 2 funding requests as directed, and that is for Imagine Clearwater, $10 million for the renovation of the waterfront park, as well as Northward Elementary, $3 million to rehabilitate and preserve the historic building for adaptive reuse. And with that, are there any questions?
Questions of Ms. Call? As I said to Mr. Dunbar earlier, we've gotten quite a bit of email traffic today from a number of different constituents. Some regarding environmental issues, some from the Chamber of Commerce, and I think it would not be bad for us to wait and complete the agenda at the first meeting in January, unless you feel as though we can add some of the things that have been sent to us today or discuss them today. It's up to you. We can do it today, but it was fairly lengthy.
Yeah, the same happened with me as well. I think if it's not going to hold us up at the state level, I think we could wait to the next one, maybe get some input on some of the.
I'd like to have staff dissect it a little bit. As Mr. Dunbar said, we normally like to stay in line with the Florida League of Cities and not get too far out of bounds.
I'll look at the email traffic that you have received to see what the comments are, because I'll be honest, I haven't seen any of it, so I'll have to take a look at it. No idea.
I beg your pardon?
I haven't seen it either.
We got it this afternoon. I provided it to Mr. Burrows. He circulated to the council, but it wasn't until like 4 o'clock.
Yeah. You need a motion to
We'll look
continue?
at it.
Yeah. Unless there's something you'd like to discuss at this time so that it can better prepare staff for January. And if there's any specific direction that you need, Ms. Call.
Actually, if there is one thing, can I have at least consensus regarding the appropriation request? I can start working with staff on those funding application forms that I need to submit, and I can also work with our lobbyists so we can at least start working on that.
I'm all for the numbers. They're aggressive in my opinion.
Well, think of it as kind of like at the federal level where we have a big pie, but we're taking little pieces of it.
Sure. No, I understand. I'm just,
I know, it is
with the
aggressive.
budget being what it is up at the state and where they get their revenues versus us, I think it's gonna be a little different. I don't mind going in with an aggressive, ask. It's just, I think we have to have realistic expectations.
And speaking with Mr. Dunbar, he said that they'd start identifying to see if there are any of those non-recurring funding sources that we might be able to plug into.
Okay. Questions for Ms. Call or comments, Councilmember Beckman?
Yeah, I'm okay, you're talking about so having a discussion on our list that was first submitted by staff, and then we added a few things on here that are bolded and underlined, and then you're talking about the amplified list as well as the Florida League of Cities. We're gonna kind of combine all those different things as well as the
Not
emails?
necessarily, we won't add everything that everyone sends us.
Well, I mean,
you
as
know.
far as the discussion.
Right,
So
that's
if-
correct.
Okay, so if we're gonna be discussing the amplify list, I just would like to make sure that the public has access to that list, because I don't think it was attached to our agenda tonight, that's all.
No, it literally just came in this afternoon, and
Right.
I asked
Right.
Scott to email it to everybody so that you could at least see
Yeah.
it.
So regarding the Florida League of Cities, we do have a comment on our legislative agenda that says that we support the Florida League of Cities. There are going to be some priorities that we are not going to be aligned with that may, like for instance, vacation rentals. We are in a particular spot that's different than other municipalities. So we align with them when it's appropriate for us. But there is a statement that says that we will work with them in those priorities that are appropriate for us to support, we will advocate.
So-
Councilmember Bunker.
So we're moving to pass it or delay it?
No, I think the vice mayor is gonna make a motion to continue to the next council
okay.
meeting.
Yeah, I had no questions.
Is that what you're making?
Yes, that's what I'm gonna make.
But I want to make sure we have any discussion that's necessary this evening.
No, I'm fine with it.
I'm fine.
Good with
I'll
that?
make a comment. if you don't
Yes,
mind.
sir.
Yeah, I'm glad we're putting in these budget items because Clearwater doesn't normally ask for money.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. I keep every year going, why didn't we ask for something? So I know it is a little aggressive, but I mean, it's good that we're asking because we're never going to get anything unless we ask, so.
Well, as I mentioned on Monday, I was actually chided by two of our representatives that said, Clearwater hasn't even asked for anything.
I know.
I said, well, don't worry.
Yeah, we got it down.
That's not going to be the case this year, so.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to continue this at next meeting.
Second.
Anyone from the public to speak to this item? Seeing none, I have a motion. Yes.
I've got a comment.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
sorry. Amy Gresh, I'm so glad to see Clearwater City staff prioritizing affordable housing. I certainly hope that the council concurs. I also support the opposition of legislation that would erode local self-government home rule. It is so important for Clearwater to retain this right that the citizens of Florida voted on 53 years ago. I would like to see the council consider a few other priorities to be added to this list. One is to help those most vulnerable by expanding Medicaid in Florida. The second is to incentivize clean energy in all areas of city business, short and long term. That's a priority that will pay off in the long term and short term.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, do you all think we can do the next item and closing comments and everything else in a half hour, or do you want a break?
Can we go through it?
Yeah, I think we can go.
Yeah, if we need to take a break, we'll take a break.
Ladies? I'll be gentle. Okay, well, Mr. Delk, 9.4.
Authorize the issuance of the Waterfront Bluff Properties request for proposals. Mr. Dell.
Mayor, Council, Michael Delk, Assistant City Manager. What I will do, we had, I think, a very, very good and productive discussion on Monday. We kind of went through the background and kind of brought ourselves back up to speed with what we have talked about for quite some time with regard to our general approach to the Bluff properties and our philosophy about what we want to bring to the table in terms of the RFP. And I'm thinking specifically of the listed kind of uses that we want to promote and encourage for the sites, the incentive package, kind of regulatory overall framework that we want to present. We talked about not only the incentives, but things we didn't want to incent to in the RFP. And so I will forego a re-presentation of that discussion on Monday, and instead kind of walk you through how we and staff and the consultant team have addressed some of the comments that you made on Monday, and provide that information to you. And then I've got some little more discussion I want to have with you tonight, specifically on the weighting criteria, and then we'll wrap up with anything else that you want to delve into with regard to the RFP, if that's okay, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So to start on page 3, change here regarding the summary of the development opportunity, we make it clearly a point that the Bluff sites are situated along and located outside the FEMA Federal Emergency Management Agency flood hazard and risk areas and are not subject to flood hazard regulations. With regard to a change that we made here, the City Hall site, I think technically you all had not directed to take down City Hall, so we are investigating the demolition of the City Hall site, so we corrected that to kind of reflect what actually the action is that you have taken. If we can jump over to page 5, wanted to point out here that we have at the bottom paragraph there incorporated the dates that you appear to have settled on Monday at the work session. And that is that the selection of a development partner is targeted for fall of 2021, and the referendum is targeted to occur no later than March of 2022. We could skip over to page 16, some of the site details. These are some things that we had some discussion with on Monday, as I recall. If I can call your attention to about the middle of the bullet areas down there, we made reference to active ground floor spaces and the fact that we particularly desire waterfront restaurants overlooking the park area. We emphasize on this site, or at this location, the public access from the site to the waterfront park is a requirement for Harborview and a strong preference for the City Hall site. On the next page, page 17, I wanted to point out that we also make reference in the Harborview site to public access provisions to the park. On page 18, middle of the bullets, once again, for the City Hall site, public access to the waterfront park, strong preference. The project should improve pedestrian access from Osceola to the park. And also, we point out here very importantly, as our discussion on Monday occurred, that the city is open to proposals that consider the joint development of City Hall and Pierce Street, including realignment of Pierce Street, as long as they continue to provide effective pedestrian vehicular access to the waterfront. On page 19, the last bullet, the city is open to, once again, the city is open to proposals that consider the joint development City Hall and Pierce Street. We reiterate the same comments for the Pierce Street site. On page 22, with regard to the City of Clearwater, our incentives, I should say, reduction of administrative fees, let's see, just the incentives direct city what we would not incent for the projects along the bluff. We have removed hotels from that list. so that those are available for incentives. Under Section 6, the submission requirements, I will tell you that I'm working with purchasing. This language will be according to our ordinance from purchasing. We've started to update the dates. I've got a date correction here to make. I talked with purchasing today in terms of some of the Tampa Bay, the advertising times for the paper is instead of the 11th, it's the 13th. What I want to assure you is that we will continue to vet these with the city attorney's office and our purchasing department right up till the point that it gets issued. So all those dates will have to fall in line. So, but I've made changes in them, and I wanted to point that out to you that that remains a work in progress that we'll finish up after your consideration. I'm nearing the end here. That. I believe is it, with the exception of the evaluation criteria. And I'm going to hand out something for you. I think this, we discussed this. I think there was, my impression of the consensus from Monday was that we were comfortable with trying to create a little more incentive under the sustainability issues. So what we've done is we increased the percentage point here, and what you can see is that I have listed some areas under, and this is on page, actually the page didn't print on my, under step 1, non-financial criteria and bonus points, 125 points. It's under that. You'll see it in red outline. I've simply expanded the 5th item there to make reference to some of the areas of sustainable incentive opportunities that people may have in terms of their evaluation or proposals. If anything, any stronger than that, I did not feel comfortable exercising without consensus from the council. So, what I think is that the development community, the kinds of developers who are likely to respond to an RFP that's frankly this complex and substantive is probably going to well know kind of what sustainability issues are and how to incorporate them into their projects. So I'm not sure that we need to do a lot of education in that regard. I think the one thing that I would mention is the materials reuse. Depending upon what you all decide with City Hall may be an opportunity for material reuse, such as concrete and those things. Sometimes on some existing sites, they'll crush it up and use it for, base and that sort of thing. So, and that again will depend on what we do with that building ultimately, and we are investigating demolition costs and that sort of thing associated with that, as you're aware. That's it. So I hope that we have addressed in some fashion, hopefully adequately, some of your major points on Monday. And depending upon what your comments are tonight, we'll be prepared to incorporate those directives in here and get the RFP issued as soon as we can. Anything that I will tell you, anything that does pop up that's that really relates to policy. And I'll be working with Pam as we finalize this. That'll keep it from being advertised, and it'll have to come back to you in one form or another. So we await your direction.
Okay. I had talked to Pam this afternoon for a minute, and I know that there are some different organizations that are going to be bidding on this, and I haven't seen it on my calendar yet, but I felt like once the RFP goes out and is on the street, at that point for the council members, I really believe it ought to be a quiet period where we're not meeting with anybody who is potentially bidding, because I really want this to be a very transparent process, and I don't want to give a benefit to one developer over another based upon input that they get from the entire council or an individual council member or whatnot. And so Pam, can you just elaborate on that?
Yes, Mayor, that is correct. That is the best practice. In addition, when questions come in to staff or to purchasing, those questions, when answered, are posted for everyone to view. So we don't, once the RFP goes out, the information is shared to everyone, and you should not meet with anyone representing or advocating for any particular program.
Yeah, I mean, we want a level playing field for
Yes.
everybody. So I just want to really reiterate that and get everybody's support for that process. I think the changes that you made since Monday are good ones. Clarifying things, timeframes, improvements on the scoring. So, questions or comments, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, so I know we had a discussion on the, on one of the core considerations of Pierce site, and you've got it specified here under, you have actually A and B about the land swap option. I kind of understand what that meant, because we actually talked about it here, and we had a kind of a consensus that, okay, if somebody wanted to take other parts and swap it out for this, if it was closer to the active edge, it may work better, that we would consider it, basically. But the wording here I don't understand. I just wanted you to clarify it on the B, where it says, let's see, the city inputs from, let's see. Respondents should be aware that the city has previously engaged with owners of potential alternate sites regarding the possibility of a land swap transaction. So there has been talks before with the city about land swaps, or is that just what we?
It's just, I mean, I think that's kind of the history that we've been through with this property generally. So we may want to, we can tweak that wording, but
It was just a little confusing to me what that, if I was a developer looking at it, which I think all of us want to have no cloudy issues there, what does that mean exactly? I know that the council talked about it and said, but we really didn't say we would accept that. We just wanted to say, hey, everything's open, give us your best shot. That was kind of the.
no, we've never said we would accept, or, but we, and I think it was something we also discussed in September. From the Bluff properties, this property, the Pierce Street, probably is the, and again, our discussion was that we believe it may be the least, from an economic development standpoint, the least important of the sites to us. And if somebody wanted to do a land swap, if there was an opportunity to do an assemblage somewhere near, particularly near the Harborview site, frankly, and that it mentions the parking opportunities off-site that could be incorporated into that, then we would consider that. Clearly, it's we know there's been interest in the site. Whether or not that ever manifests itself into a land swap or anybody who would want to have the Pierce Street site, but that was something that we discussed back in September. At that time, you were comfortable as elected officials to keep that in there. It can stay in there. It doesn't have to stay in there. So that's purely at your.
It was cloudy for me when I read about this. That respondents should be aware that the city has previously engaged with other potential alternate sites regarding the possibility of a land swap transaction. Sound like we had done it before or something. Maybe that just should be worded to make it.
Yeah, it may say there's never been any negotiation with in terms of this a land swap or anything, but have we expressed that it could be possible to have a land swap for the Pierce Street site? Then the answer to that is yes. We've held that out there. It's been a public discourse that we were willing to consider a land swap to that. So have we indicated that privately or otherwise? Yes. I mean, that's been a public record. So. And we may want to change the wording of that section if that's would be more comfortable.
Well, that's just my opinion.
Well, and if I may, my approach on this part of this language, I think this ought to be taken out. We've talked about land swap, we've heard land swap, but nothing has ever come of it. While this RFP is on the market looking for feedback, land swap should be off the table in my book, as far as I look at. The opportunity to discuss and provide us with an opportunity to consider a land swap has been there for how many years? and it has not happened. We're putting this out to the development community all over the country to get their interest. I don't think there should be any opportunity for a land swap to come forward while this RFP is on the market. Now, if no proposal comes forward for that site, you know, we're back to square one and we can readdress that. But I don't think, I would personally like to see this language taken out. I wouldn't like to see land swap anywhere in this RFP mentioned on this site, because I think it, as a developer, and when this RFP goes out, this isn't going to be the only RFP out on the market, you know, for developers to be looking at. I mean, there's developers all over this country that probably have RFPs that would stack 2 feet high all the way around this dais for various municipalities. Probably, you know, a few hundred to 1,000 municipalities are looking for development in their community and are looking for these developers. We've got to provide something that really sparks their interest. And when you're putting in something that says, well, you know, they've talked about a land swap and that might still come forward, why am I going to even put my effort into it? I'm going to look at one of these other 200 RFPs that I've got on my desk. So, you know, that's why I think along this line, I think this language needs to come out totally. And the other language, and I'm not worried how you tweak it or whatever, I don't think we take anything off the board as far as incentives, because, you know, we're going to want things such as, and I know there's people out there that want things like certain certifications, you know, in the construction process, LEED certification, and, you know, what level are we going to want out of this? Well, from the construction side, from the developer side, it's an economics issue. And the cost, the additional cost to reach these levels of certification can sometimes hit that tipping point where they say, you know what, it doesn't work. I'm not coming forward. So we've got to be willing, if we want those certifications, and this is the very tough part, we're going to have to be able to offer the incentives, tax increment financing, or other opportunities to incentivize that type of a development. Or it's because you can't just say, we're going to require this level of LEED certification with no incentives, because most of the development community is going to look at that and say, that makes this development opportunity cost prohibitive. And I'm going to look at one of these other 200 I got on my desk. So we have got to have something that stands out and catches their eye. So I'll get off my soapbox and let y'all digest that.
Do you want to say something specifically on this? Otherwise, I'm going to Councilmember Bunker. He had his hand up.
I'll make it quick. I understand what you're saying, but we haven't really said what the incentives are. And if I was a developer and I'm looking at this as a developer, I would say, okay, I'm going to build green because that's something that everybody wants. And then I would come back with a proposal for give me incentives to do it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with a developer in their proposal coming forward saying, this is what I want to build, but these are some of the incentives I need you to consider. And leave it open-ended. Let them say, this is what I need you to consider, and that's where negotiation takes place. That's where it becomes a negotiation on whether or not you can get to an agreed-upon document to build something. So, but I don't want to handcuff ourselves by not being amenable to, let the development community tell us what they need and what they would like to see to be able to do it. It's easy to say no. It's easy to say no. But if you don't get any proposals, you got nothing to say no to. So,
Councilmember Bunker.
I'd like to agree with Councilmember Hamilton on the language about the land swap. Because I think we definitely do need to know, are we going to do a land swap with the Church of Scientology, which is the one that we've primarily been talking about for some time, they're interested in with the Pierce property, the old CMA. Well, you know, we should know that before we send this out. They've had more than 3 years now to come up with a plan and to negotiate. Miscavige said back in 2017, when he stopped talking to us, that he would wait for the next council. Well, we're here and we want to move on. You would think by now he'd have some idea of what he wants and what he'll give us. So should we have that settled before we release this, or should we just write it off now?
I can argue it both ways. I mean, one of the things I said on Monday was I am cautious about being prescriptive. Councilmember Hamilton just proposed not being too prescriptive on specific lead certifications, for instance. I don't believe that we can come up with every permutation potentially that could be on this site, on all these sites. It's not, having served up here for almost 11 years, on and off, I've seen a lot of development, but I am not in the development industry. And if you talk to a developer, an architect, they will have concepts that would never come to my mind because they've seen different opportunities and figure out how they best want to utilize a property. Generally, in tandem with what market studies they've done for a given location. I mean, all of these developers, if they're worth their salt, are going to be doing market studies to see where we have holes in this market, what this market will support from an economic standpoint. And again, so my point being that they are more creative than I am. Or, no offense, probably all 5 of us, because it's their business. So that's where I would just be cautious.
But is it fair for the developers, not knowing whether what they're proposing even has a shot if Scientology decides that now they want to swoop in and give us the Fort Harrison Hotel and the Superpower building for the Pierce lot? And I'd say I approve that.
Yeah, I'm sold.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hold your breath. Well, that is the issue too. I mean, you know, developers are at risk, and so they do put money into these projects and the plans. Okay, I want to have further discussion before we actually start to have motions, and I think we've got some folks in the audience that want to speak. Councilmember Beckman?
Yeah, I have, you know, I expressed some concerns about the timing and the cost of incentives that we may have to give. We did mention density and square footage, things as increasing density as incentives that we would offer, and that's fine with me, but those, you know, those can be offered if, I would propose that they would be offered if developers go above and beyond a certain level of green certification, whether it's LEED or something else. To me, building sustainably in the year 2021 or 2022, 23, whenever it's going to start, is like a no-brainer. Other municipalities are doing it. Right now, like the standard LEED level, I was informed, is basically what code is now. So when they say it's LEED certified, it's like, well, that's what the requirements are. So then we move up to silver and gold and platinum. And so if we can require silver and give bonus points to gold, I think that would be good. I think it sends the message. I mean, first of all, it makes good financial sense. And there may be some additional slight cost initially, but you know, there's lifetime costing. You know, when you expense the cost over the lifetime of something, it certainly is not. This is our premier building right next to the water. We make our, our whole economy is built off of the environment, our health. We need to join the 21st century here and incorporate these standards. And I think, I read the comments that are here, and I think we know how people feel in this city. And I think if we look at that landings referendum in a 2-to-1 margin, people care about the environment, and they're looking for us to take action. And I think we need to require, a certain level of standard that has a color, silver, gold, or platinum. And,
Well, the ratio on the referendum wasn't 2-for-1, but I won't go into that. I'm all for putting some level of LEED standards in there, but I would also point to your comment, which it makes financial sense. And if it does, then they're going to put it in anyway. So that begs the question, why do you have to dictate it?
Because
if it
it's
makes
that important.
financial sense.
It is that important to us. There is no wiggle room, no nothing. This is what.
To you.
To us as a community, to voters.
That's a very bold statement, I would say. But
Well, again, as I've said, it's easy to stand on the sidelines and say, I want all these buildings to be built to this thing. But how many people that are out there saying that have ever built a building to that specification and understand the economics of it versus, the development community ain't going to build a building that doesn't give them a return on their investment. And requiring this level, the gold level or whatever, silver level, gold level, whatever, I'm not even sure, I'm not aware of very many platinum anywhere, but if they're, if getting to that level costs so much money and there's no incentives on the other side to offset those costs, that's where a developer turns and says, the ROI is not there for me on this, I'm walking away. How far are we willing to go, before we say, we're not going to let you walk away, we want to make this work, let's negotiate. Negotiations is how things happen. When you set hard line rules, that's when you start losing people. So,
is there anyone from the public to speak to this item? Yes.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to see each of you. I'm Aaron Smith-Levin. I live at 1615 Harvard Street. And I do have a couple thoughts about the RFP language indicating that the CMA lot is still subject to a land swap. First off, if it is possible to do a deal with Miscavige, that would be a net gain for the city financially and strategically, I would 100% support such a deal. But as far as these current talks with Miscavige, assuming there are current talks happening, I think we have to acknowledge that considering his motivations, he is going to stretch these talks out for as long as the city allows him to stretch it out before he pounces. It is in Miscavige's interest to create uncertainty about how the city is going to move forward with development on the bluff over the next 7 months. That uncertainty buys him a lot of time, and it harms the city's RFP. Him dragging his feet thus far has caused the city to include language in the RFP that is all but guaranteed to have a negative impact on the amount of interest we're going to get from developers nationwide. That is not a coincidence. It's part of the intention. So I believe it would be in the city's best interest to not only remove the language from the RFP, but specifically state clearly that Miscavige's window to do this deal closes on January 11th when the RFP gets published. If we are to consider Miscavige's intentions, Miscavige is against any development that brings more non-Scientologists to the area. It's only because non-Scientologists in this area don't help Scientology. You cannot get into Scientology at the Flag Land Base. Many people don't understand this. You can get into Scientology in Tampa. You can go a few miles down the road and get into Scientology in Bel Air. You cannot join Scientology in downtown Clearwater. Non-Scientologists are just considered a security threat to the Flagland base. And believe me, I know, I spent years living and working on the Flagland base when I was still in Scientology. Now, the city council gets criticized sometimes, and even the staff, for not doing enough to stand up to Scientology. And I know the vast majority of that criticism is unfair and unwarranted. And I think what we're discussing here is something solid and positive that the city can do, not only to protect its own interests with respect to the quality of this RFP, but to limit Miscavige's ability to interfere with future development plans, because that is the goal. Delaying and interfering is the goal, and I think we all know that. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
I got a slip. All right, first one, Barbara Fisher. I understand that when you evaluate subsequent proposals, you will not require substantial environmental action on part of the builder. 5 bonus points out of 200 plus evaluation is nothing. The city needs to be clear that environmental consideration must be embedded in development. The former City Hall property and adjoining property can certainly be granted fewer design restraints on size, etc., but good environmental protection should be baked into the requirements, not treated as niceties. I would go so far as to hold off on putting the Harborview Tract out of proposals until we are assured that developers are serious about environmental protections and ameliorations. The vista is beautiful now and speaks well of our city's appreciation for the waterfront. Jana Wiggins. The reason for the opposition is a lack of mandatory requirements for the construction to meet green and sustainable building requirements. It's time we stop lagging other cities close and far from us in requiring this in our own city-owned building and renovation specifications. Following our green print and other goals, these requirements should not be bonus points but mandatory. We need this to be our best practices for our economy, health, and environment. You can see this Dunedin's code language, and they include their code site. There are other cities that have this, but Dunedin is the closest to us. Thank you for your consideration. Elizabeth Davis, to the mayor and council. As you confirm your plan for the 3 new sites near the bluff, please ensure a balanced triple bottom line. 1, economic prosperity. 2, environmental quality. 3, community quality of life. Not just as a singular priority, but of economic prosperity. Changes to balance the expectations of Greenprint. Even in 2009, you invested in energy improvements that saved the city $9 million. Often, as I am sure you know, you have to spend money to make money. Invest to save and reinvest the savings. Renewable energy on every new building should be the expectation. Community education on Greenprint should begin with leadership from council. Benefits of a green building last 80 years. That is from the December 2011 Greenprint. That math is probably more improved in this year of 2020. Awareness, inspiration, action, benefits. The well-written and approved Greenprint plan. Now it is time to act. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Mary Oliver quote from the Greenprint plan of Clearwater. It need not be more work, but to look around and embrace some of the standards from our neighbor city of Dunedin. Standards of building green are already profiled and ready to tweak to your needs. Every new building, city and otherwise, apartments, hotels, and housing developments of all kinds would expect renewable energy. They can opt to fund renewables on our property, cover our playgrounds with solar panels, plant trees, but expect something from everyone. The long-term profits they will enjoy deserve an investment for every resident of Clearwater. Here are the details from Greenprint for you to lead. Reduce the energy demand of existing private buildings through energy efficiency upgrades. Decrease energy demand of existing city buildings and operations. Replace conventional sources of energy with renewable sources. Increase the resource and energy efficiency of new public and private buildings. Once again, I look forward to the time you will invest in educating each other and city staff to review and execute the Greenprint plan of Clearwater. Laura Black. Back in 2011, Clearwater developed a framework called Greenprint that contains strategies to create a sustainable community. Greenprint sought a competitive, vibrant green future. The Greenprint report stated that the city will lead by example by building all new municipal facilities to a nationally recognized high-level performance standards such as LEED. This RFP for the development of 3 prime city-owned sites currently assigns a measly 5-point bonus points for meeting green building standards. This should be a requirement for building on city-owned property, not just an insignificant bonus. This is a good opportunity to show the Clearwater community that you still stand behind the sustainability goals you set forth almost a decade ago. Amy Gresh. I would support RFPs that require a minimum standard for sustainability and green building standards. This is something our neighbors in Dunedin have been doing for almost 10 years. Clearwater has a lot of catching up to do in this realm, and it can't be put off any longer. Not only does green building pay off in terms of lower energy costs, water consumption, and CO2 emissions, but it would provide additional public publicity for the Imagine Clearwater project. Imagine a greener and more sustainable Clearwater. Not only residents, but also tourists can care about net zero developing. It is imperative that new building construction be certified by Florida Green Building Coalition or equivalent organization. We must increase our green space. As a former economist, I'm not alone in knowing that it pays off in economic terms. Finally, it is a crucial step to stem the tide of climate change and ensure that Clearwater exists for future generations to enjoy. And Ms. Glenna Wentworth. Mayor Hibbert and City Council members, new construction on the Three Bluff property is an opportunity to showcase Clearwater as a green, sustainable city that attracts ecotourism. The proposed RFP offering only 5 points for non-specific environmental standards are not sufficient to accomplish this. The proposed RFPs are also in keeping with our city sustainability plan, Greenprint, that calls for a commitment to green buildings and green jobs. Greenprint spells out specific national building standards such as LEED that are best practice for our economy, our health, and our environment. Yet these standards are not included in the RFPs. Our cities in Florida, such as Dunedin and Orlando, have city policies requiring green building certification standards in new construction. Please consider including specific green building standards in these RFPs rather than just as bonus points. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions for Mr. Delk? Councilmember Bunker.
Oh, it's more of a comment, but I agree with Councilmember Beckman and the folks who have written into us that environmental standards are important, very important. I'm also aware that we've got 3 properties that any other city in the world would be willing to quickly move, but we have the unique problem in this city of having Scientology that has blocked many of the people who might have been interested in putting in a proposal. So I'm not sure what level we can demand of environmental, but I would hope that anyone who would consider building would be shooting for that silver level, at least. But I think it's also very important that we send a message to Scientology and say, you know, give us an answer now, or we're moving on and we're doing this, because we don't need Scientology to make the downtown prosper, and we shouldn't allow them to get in our way. We just need to keep letting the people know that there's no worries about coming down here. Scientology, as Mr. Mayor, you have said, they're not going to kidnap you. They're also not going to be trying to recruit you. But if we come down and reclaim the downtown and shop and dine downtown, it's the last thing that David Miscavige wants. So we can just, by coming and having fun and enjoying the downtown, make a real change. So if Miscavige can give us an answer before this goes out in January, that'd be great. Otherwise, I think you know, we either have to tell him no deal, or you know, postpone it until we get something from Miscavige. And frankly, I'm not sure that Miscavige is really going to come up with anything serious. If he was, he'd tell us by now.
So I think what I'm hearing is there's two issues that we kind of have unresolved. The environmental lead issues, and I'm gonna ask a question, and then the swap possibilities. Am I clear that there's no other issue other than those two?
I think so.
So everybody agree that that's, everything else is okay? Well, let's go ahead. See, I like talking first and getting a motion, rather than going through a lot of different amendments. That's just my preference. Councilmember Beckman, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna ask you a question about, I don't mind increasing the number of points for the environmental, but can you tell me some of the differences between the base, and if you can, it's okay. I would like staff to sometime come in. I mean, I've looked at the criteria long ago, but not recently. The differences between base lead, silver, gold, and platinum. Because the one thing I have an issue with is if it is so obviously beneficial, then it's something that people will do automatically. If there's so much financial benefit from them, a rational, and I think that's the type of developers we're going to get, because these are significant projects, then they are going to make those decisions automatically.
Okay, well, let me just say, I am far from any kind of an expert about LEED certification levels. I did, again, this is part of my concern in making really huge decisions up here, is not having enough time to really think and process and talk to others and whatever, but it is what it is. So, was asked to look at the LEED certification and maybe propose some language. So there's they have 100 points. There's a certified level that is 40 to 49 points. Silver is another 10, 50 to 59. Gold is 60 to 79, and platinum is 80 points and above. This credit system aims to allocate points based on the potential environmental impacts and human benefits of each credit. So this, the LEED organization has parameters that they look at, and they weight different things. Yeah, I don't feel comfortable in speaking much further
That's
on
fine.
that.
Michael, can you?
I'm sorry.
But a number of cities.
Tara Kivitz left.
Okay.
If she was here, I was going to put her on the spot.
But a number of cities require this. A number of cities, there are a number of buildings that are platinum or net zero buildings. The Sierra, the building downtown St. Pete, where the Sierra Club is a net zero building, I believe. And so it's not, it's not out of the realm of what people are doing and moving forward. I think our writers, our residents and voters, activists here that have written in, do cite green print. So we do have a document that is, 10, 11 years old that is, has recognized the importance of these things. So, I'm not going to make a motion right this minute, but, some of the language I played around with was maybe submissions, and I was going to start higher, but submissions must include design and construction that meets LEED Gold level of certification or a minimum of 60 points on a 100-point scale. Bonus points will be given for design and construction that meets platinum level standards. And so that would be a phenomenal little win there, but we could substitute maybe silver. Submissions must include design and construction that meets silver level certification, with bonus points being given to gold or platinum. And I'll take that. It's a start. Yeah, that's,
Mr. Horn, I thought when we built some buildings when I was around that we had met LEED certification on several of them, but I can't recall specifically which ones. And I know we had also looked at meeting them, but not going through all of the certification because there was a cost for that as well. It also kind of went along with some of the buildings that we were looking at getting up to a CAD 4 or 5. But do you recall any of those?
No, I do not.
You don't? Okay.
So when I had my conversation with Ms. Aiken yesterday, so she and I discussed, and I don't want to speak for her, but essentially she said most of our building code, the basics now are general lead certification, not a color certification. And then the other thing was, in the language that I'm kind of proposing is, it's submissions must include design that meets lead, silver level of certification. So it doesn't receive the certification, but it can meet it. So you can build to the standards, but not pay for the formal certification. And that's fine. You don't need to pay for big.
Which is what a lot of people do
Yep.
because of the cost,
Yeah.
that additional cost.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. As long as you build to the standard, I don't need a piece of paper.
Ms. Aiken, did you have
Well,
something to
that
say?
may be, if you don't get a certification, it may be very difficult for us to determine whether or not you are meeting those requirements. When we were discussing, it's my understanding, we don't get certification for leads, but that many of the standards for our building code are based on the basic lead requirement.
Which I think used to be bronze when it first started.
Now I believe they just call it certified.
Right. Okay, so how is everyone going up to silver?
I'm good with it.
I'm good, but is the language going to be such that, are we going to let the development community know that there's room for negotiation for them to get to that level? I mean, we're willing to be a partner and participate,
Well, what I'm hearing is that's the floor.
That's the floor.
if
And I don't know enough to understand what the incremental cost of going from certified to silver is. And that's where I have a little bit of heartburn. Because now I'm jumping into something I don't even know. I'm making just a, and I take that with all due respect,
No,
okay?
I totally respect that,
I think
and I'm
that's
there
a
too.
problem. That's a problem for me.
And it's a problem with the rush, with having a week to look at this and finesse something, and that's truly it is. I mean, we don't know enough. I don't know enough.
I think, can we say, it is our desire that if these be constructed to a silver, LEED silver level certification. But again, that's our desire, and, how you get to that level and get it done is open for negotiation.
I mean, I'd almost rather give more points to this as a percentage, double the points for things being done rather than specifics, standard. That way, I mean, if you made it 10 points, we've got a range of a minimum of 75, and the maximum points are 125. If the average was 100, we're giving 10% of the rating criteria to the sustainability initiatives. Councilmember Beckman and then the Vice Mayor.
But if we're looking at numbers, okay, I mean, here I am, I'm looking at this, as if it's a grading scale, and I got some kid who's saying, well, if certified is 40 to 49 and silver is 50 to 59, you better believe those builders can just skirt in with 1 or 2 extra points, and now they've got the silver designation at a real low level. It's a tiny little jump, you know what I mean?
And the problem is I don't know
What it entails, I don't either.
what's that incremental step that gets it from certified to silver? I mean,
Well-
to even be silver, does that mean you're doing, certain level of R levels for insulation? Are you
Is it
using certain
windows?
HVAC equipment?
Yep.
Are you using certain roofing materials? Are you using solar on it? Are you, there's all sorts of, I know enough to be dangerous about building, but, Mr. Dell, do you
May I
have something
comment?
to, certainly?
Yes, I think, one is I think this is an indeterminable situation that we're trying to discern here with regard to an applicant proposal. I think, we could, what I do here, that, let me kind of throw this out, and I actually gave some thought to that this week, since Monday as I was working on this, expanding the point system to incentivize the sustainability initiatives, and which you just mentioned a moment ago, Mayor. I did not do that because I didn't consider that my latitude on Monday really went to that extent. But I do think that is a valid, let's weight it a little bit more. Along the same lines, I would suggest that maybe rather than selecting a specific LEED certification, that we maybe include that we are going to evaluate these incentive points, which are going to be slightly more heavily weighted for LEED certification, period. What I think is that if we get the kind of development community responses that we want to get on this property, I think frankly a lot of them are going to be probably ahead of us on that curve anyway. And the other thing I will say about that is that, right now, we have to incentivize, 1,500 square foot restaurants in downtown Clearwater. So I think when we're talking about the incentive obligation to try to support LEED certified development, almost anything that's going to happen on any of these three properties is unfortunately going to require a public participation, a partnership, simply because we're
Water has a hidden community that nobody really talks about, and that's our IT community. I mean, we have a super IT community here, and what that means is we have a young workforce that makes a lot of money, and it's right down here in downtown Clearwater. It's the silent engine in downtown Clearwater. But those people that are there are looking, those young people that are working demand a green community. I mean, that's one of the things they're here for. And so I've always, and this goes back longer than 10 years, been, if we are building something, build it right, because we're Clearwater, and we want to tell people that this is our concern. We are concerned that anything being built here is we're a green community. And so I think by saying, hey, we start out at a basic level and we'll give you 5 or 10 points, I think you start out with a silver. You say, look, this is what we expect for our community. I think it says a lot for our community. And like you said, I think you said it right, the kind of developers we're attracting, I can tell you, I was with an organization called NARI years ago, and I mean, we did green certifications way back then, and a lot of the contractors when they took jobs, there was no question. They were going to do it green. If you didn't want it green, they'd get somebody else to do it. And that was years ago. And I think the kind of developers that are coming in, they aren't going to give us second-class stuff. They're going to come in with that certification in mind. But to put it out there and say, Clearwater wants to have at least a silver certification level, and then we'll give you so many points, 10 or 20 points if you want to go gold, that would even be better. I think that says a lot for what we're saying about what we want to see in Clearwater.
to get the incentive points.
I think we start with a base of silver and then we give incentive to go with gold. Yeah.
Hold on. Let me recognize everybody. Otherwise, we're going to have a free-for-all. Councilmember Hamilton, then Bunker, and then Councilmember.
I mean, I can go with the majority on this. I mean, I don't, I'm just, hoping, that my whole approach to this and is, like I said earlier, I want this RFP to stand out to the development community. and their opportunity to, I want it to stand out and be some. So, I don't think asking to build to silver is a deal killer for a lot of them, but I think it's going to require us, through the negotiation process, after we receive the responses, to look deep into our pockets or whatever to meet their,
We may have to
request.
sweeten our side.
We may have to sweeten our side, but you know what? I want to have the opportunity to have to sweeten our side. So, if it's, if it's the will of the majority, I can get behind that.
Councilmember Bunker.
I agree with that.
I would like these to be unanimous decisions, because going into this referendum and the RFP, it's important that it is a 5-0 vote to me. So I'm willing to compromise on some stuff. Councilmember Beckman?
Thank you. I agree. I think it's a good idea to have a unanimous front for this important initiative. I'm good with the silver. That's nice, and incentivize gold or platinum. But I would say from here, for any potential developer that's out there, because we're not going to be talking to them once the RFP is out there, I don't believe in sweetening the deal for them coming forward with a silver. So if somebody's expecting sweet stuff from me for a silver level, I think a silver is the basic. Saying that without a full education of what silver means. You're exactly right.
I don't think that's what Councilmember Hamilton meant. I think what he meant was, it is a negotiation, it's a regression equation, which regression equations have many variables in them, and you may increase, an incentive in one area to offset something that the developer does on the other, in another area. And that's how most of these negotiations are. On a lot of the previous deals, Ms. Aiken looks like she wants to join in the conversation.
Actually, Mayor, I think what you were describing, I would not have put it quite so eloquently, but I agree with you. It will be built into the bid if that's the requirement. You won't know whether you've sweetened it or not. It will be reflected in the bids and in the proposals.
So I was kind of thinking, because I've never been through this before, but so if we put this out here as it's required silver level, then we're not going to have developer, Jane Doe who comes forward and has a great looking proposal, and she's not going to say to us, well, I've got all these silver level initiatives, and so I want you to cough up X, Y, and Z. That's not how that's going to go, correct?
What it would be probably is, they'll say, we met your silver criteria,
Yeah.
and we want 2 more floors of height. Or we want to reduce the envelope so we can have actually a bigger envelope on the development front. Or we might not want to have as many parking spaces. Or there will be ways that they will take and make it less expensive for them to develop a site in this area, where they'll be able to develop more, to then help pay for the fact that they are going to have to spend X on getting up to that silver expectation. And that's how these deals work.
But I think with us not knowing what the difference is between lead and silver and gold and platinum, we don't really know that, right? So by us not being educated, by me not being educated about the difference in those levels, they have the advantage. So I want to be fully educated. When those proposals come in and somebody sits down and says, well, I'll do this and this, so I expect these in return, I need to know the value of this and this and this that they're doing. I need to know that. And we've got time. I've got time to learn that. And I think it'd be great if we had a presentation maybe sometime from somebody who knows all those intricacies and can spell them out for us. Because going forward, I think, we're going to have this discussion about other buildings on city properties, and it's just something that's, in our future. So I need to have an understanding of it.
So we have certain parking standards. I'm just trying to give examples. And let's say they want to be at the bare minimum, we'd probably like some more public parking because it's going to be adjacent to Imagine Clearwater, but I think we're pricing parking spaces right now at $25,000 a space. So maybe they want to reduce 10 spaces, you know? And by doing so, they get $250,000 that they can then move over into meeting the LEED standards. That's the type of stuff that'll happen. And you just have to expect it. And you'll see all these different proposals. That's why we have a professional staff that's going to rate them. What I'm hearing is consensus to go with the silver. Everybody shake their heads.
Do you want me to make a motion? Do we have to make a motion?
No, I'm gonna ask for a motion altogether. So
okay.
the other issue is obviously the opportunity to do a land swap. Councilmember Hamilton.
My feeling on the land swap language is when we walk out of this building tonight, the land swap is off the table until this RFP is over, because we're instructing Michael to move forward with tweaking and finalizing the language of this RFP to put it to market. And I wouldn't want, we keep hearing January 11th, could be January 13th, but let's say January 11th. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it would be prudent to allow Scientology or any other entity to come forward on January 10th and say, hey, I got this proposal for you. No, I think the window shuts tonight when we walk out of here. And I think the land swap language is eliminated from the RFP. That's my position.
Discussion, Councilmember Bunker.
I'd agree with that. And I'm going to express some concern about how Scientology might try to sabotage the deal the way they did with the aquarium moving downtown. But we should fight back as hard as we can and say the time for the deal is over. For now, if nothing happens and that property is still around, we'll consider it later. But I think we should let developers know that this is what we have to offer.
Vice Mayor, Councilmember Beckman.
I think that after reading this, it clouds the issue, and I think every developer needs to be on even ground. And this would make, if I was to read this, it just makes me wonder if I'm on even playing field with everybody else. So I'm for taking the swap out of it.
Okay, well, I make sure that you all understand, we never contemplated a land swap outside the Bluff property RFP. So the only reason it was considered that, it was never considered outside the context of the RFP. So in that regard, from our standpoint, nothing's being taken off the table because it wasn't there currently. But in the context of the RFP, I understand you correctly. You want any reference to a swap opportunity is eliminated from the document, and we can do that. And I think that's of little consequence or no consequence at this point.
Councilmember Beckman.
I agree with the arguments that have been presented. I think it does cloud it because the way I understand it is we have 3 properties. Developers can bid on 1, 2, 3, any combination, right? And they're bidding on development. What are you going to put there to, revitalize our downtown and meet our parameters? It's not about the swap right now. It shouldn't be, I think. Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, I'll,
Mayor?
yes.
I have a question on your intent. I want to make sure that I understand you. Your consideration is, or you believe that you have consensus around a doubling of the weighting? So instead of 5 points, 10 points for sustainability initiatives, and that it include a minimum silver standard?
If you want to add that, we didn't increase the rankings. That was
the weighting, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, currently we have 5 points for sustainability, I believe, and then we have 5 points for commitment to green and wellness certification standards.
Right. Okay.
So, if I think the silver standard is what's kind of taken over for the points, and either we're going to increase the total number of points if you want to add the points system, or we have to subtract from one of the other areas points to reallocate, right?
Yeah, so leave the weighting as is, add lead silver
As the minimum
as a
standard.
minimum standard under the sustainability. Okay, thank you.
Well, that means bonus points for gold or platinum.
Right.
Okay, okay. And 5 bonus points for gold or platinum.
Well, 5 for sustainability and 5 for the green and wellness. That's what the current rankings are.
Well, I thought it was going to read that the builder will build to silver level and receive 5 points for gold or platinum.
Well, but aren't there other things beyond just LEED certifications?
Yes.
Yeah.
For green and
Yeah.
wellness and
Yeah.
sustainability?
Yeah. So that should be required. Those are the requireds, not the 5 bonus.
The silver is what's required.
Okay,
And then they can get other points based upon different sustainability initiatives.
okay,
And green and wellness.
okay. Okay,
To get the points, they have to respond to the section. If they did not respond to the section, they'll get 0
Zero.
points.
right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't dictate that they submit a silver LEED building, but it requires that they submit a silver LEED certified building to get the points from the incentive program.
No, that's not what you're
No,
hearing.
that's not what they're saying.
Okay.
They have to be a minimum of, if you want to be in the game,
Okay,
You want to submit a bid?
you have to be at silver.
Yeah,
all right.
If
And-
you want to get bonus points, then you have to exceed it.
I'm glad I mentioned that then.
Very good observation, Mr. Hill. All right,
Well,
Now-
because I was focusing on the weighting.
I understand.
Okay.
Well, that was another way, that was just an alternative I was trying to come up with to meet the criteria. I mean, one of the ways you can always impact any of the RFPs is the way that you score stuff. I mean, that's one of the most important things, especially objective criteria. Subjective's pretty tough. But you know, I mean, when you set the ground rules, which in my opinion, that's the scoring system, that's how you can affect the outcome of the game. Okay, so I think, is there anything else you need clarifications on?
So the weighting system will remain pretty much as is. But
Correct.
the requirement to be considered as a potential development partner requires silver certified
Floor
LEED
is
buildings.
silver certification.
Okay.
So for clarification, we have been previously referring to either well silver, or well LEED, or other equivalent green building certification standards. So do we still want to do that? You have to meet the well silver, LEED silver, or other equivalent, or are you just saying you're LEED or you're nothing?
I don't know the difference between the will.
I don't either, but there are multiple other standards. It's not just LEED. And so previously we had said are other equivalent. I mean, because there are costs with getting certifications by each certifying agency. So are we willing to accept an equivalent certification standard, or we're going to require everyone to go through LEED?
I'm okay with equivalent.
Okay, thank you. That, we have handled it that way in the other language we've used here. So I think that makes it, they're not stuck with just LEED.
So these are competing standards is what this is.
I believe they're different. They may even be very similar.
Well, they're
But,
making money by doing the certification.
yes, sir.
Well, equivalent means they would have to be the same. I mean, the standards would have to be, you couldn't have LEED being here and an equivalent being not as,
Yes.
Well, it would have to be a readily discernible standard and not just a, paper indicating, gee, we meet all the requirements, but we're not going to go through so it would have to be a demonstrable indication that they're a certified building, LEED equivalent, if that's what your suggestion is. And Mayor, if I may.
So the well standard, though, is We spend more than 90% of our time in buildings. The well building standard is the first of its kind to focus solely on health and wellness. I think that's different than sustainability, but that's just me.
Well, and I think that shows us, I mean, we have a glaring hole in our knowledge base to understand what these things are, what the implications are. I don't know what the well level is, so maybe we want to just use lead silver. And then, and again, as Ms. Aiken said, do we want to have lead level certification or lead certification and require the certification? Otherwise, who's going to prove or determine that they met that level? I mean, again, these things are all
There's 129 criteria, it says,
that they can choose from.
that they can choose from.
Mhm.
So, I
To
mean,
get
I
their
think our
60
building
points.
department can determine whether those are a part of the blueprints.
Okay.
And that they're completed.
Then why don't we take out the well because we don't know what it is? You know?
I think it's
really.
different from the sustainability of the lead certification. But that's a very quick,
That's more like.
Way I'm hearing your direction, I mean,
we're gonna
repeat.
get there eventually,
I'm
Mr.
sure,
Dunn.
I think we're actually close, but it's a challenging.
I told you you
I-
should have
what I
brought
would
that
do-
chicken parmesan
Yeah.
home.
I know, that's,
The restaurant.
we're way past 7:40, so it's but what I would do, as I understand your direction, would move into, it's on the prior page, under the minimum threshold requirements, and I would add their silver LEED certified or equivalent buildings, period.
Yes.
And what I am hearing then, unless you make any changes, the item 4 and 5, under the weighting criteria, would remain as is. They could pursue those incentive points through the well program or other initiatives, but they wouldn't have to. It's not a price of entry. It's an incentive to make their project more competitive.
That's good with me.
Or a lead over silver.
Mm-hmm.
So if they pursued gold or platinum, they could get the points as well.
Everyone good with that?
Perfect.
Now I'm ready to entertain a motion that incorporates
Okay.
really only 2 changes.
So I make a motion. Do you want one motion or I'm just going to stick with I make a motion that the proposed language for our RFP is submissions must include design and construction that meets LEED silver level of certification or equivalent.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Somebody want to make a motion on the
I will make a motion that all reference to land swap be deleted from the RFP. And that means that as of 8:45 tonight, the entertaining of a land swap opportunity will not take place until this RFP process has run its course.
Any questions? Do I have a second?
Second.
Anyone to speak to this amendment? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Now I need a motion for the entire item.
I move to approve agenda item
9.4.
9.4
As amended?
as amended.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Anything else, Mr. Horn?
Mayor, council, we are in our last meeting, culminating what has been a very challenging year with this pandemic. But what I wanted to do is express some thanks on behalf of the city staff to you all for being there for us and giving us the support we needed to get through the pandemic challenges that we had in the earlier part of the year. We could not have gotten to this point without your support. And I just want to issue a very sincere thanks on behalf of the staff.
Thank you. Mr. Delco. Ms. Aiken, anything?
No, sir.
Okay. Closing comments. I think I started on my right last time, so why don't I start with the vice mayor and then go to Councilmember Beckman.
Okay, well, you know, it has been a very trying year this year for everybody, not only us and staff, but everybody. But I just want to say that I enjoyed representing you this year. And I can tell you this, I'm really looking forward to next year being a better year. I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, and I pray that we have a better 21 next year. Happy New Year.
Councilmember Beckman.
I just wanted to say happy holidays, and it's been an absolute pleasure to serve as your council member for the second half here of 2020. I hope everybody's safe and that you're able to enjoy some time, whether it's Zoom or outdoor distance, with the people that you love and miss being with. So have a wonderful holiday.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Happy holidays to everyone. I think we've galvanized ourselves during 2020, where 2021 I don't think can throw us any curveball we can't hit. So
Don't say that.
I think, you know, not that I'm looking forward to curveballs, but you know, I'm looking forward to bigger and better things for our community. And I just hope everybody stays safe. You know, if you don't feel comfortable doing something, don't do it. If you feel you're taking the proper protocols and the business you want to frequent is also you're comfortable with the protocols that they're instituting, you know, help that small business out. So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. We'll see you next year.
Councilmember Bunker.
I also want to say Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It has been a fascinating year coming in on this, what I would consider normal, since it's the only experience I've had on the council. So I'm looking forward to the next year and getting out and meeting more people in person and actually having a time to sit down and talk with as many of you as I can, and try to meet your needs and try to represent you as best as possible. So again, I'm not going to go on a curse-filled tirade like Tom Cruise, but you know, be safe, be careful, wear a mask, and have a great holiday season.
I'm going to start out with my own comments before I read all of the cities. First of all, I want to thank all of our employees because they really have been under an extraordinarily stressful time. I think all of our citizens in Clearwater and throughout this nation have been. And I don't think any of us can truly put our finger on why. Obviously the pandemic and the politics and everything else, but it's hard to really quantify why people are under stress. But the fact of the matter is they are. And our city employees have really performed admirably throughout this. I hope that COVID is completely gone by the end of 2021. And we, I believe, are in the later innings of this pandemic, but we are not finished. And it is no time to let your guard down. Sadly, we've lost, as I said in my prayer, we've lost a lot of people this year. Some people you may know. I know of employees that we've lost who are retired, but we lost them to COVID. And as I've also said, we've lost a lot of time with family and loved ones, not being able to visit them because we don't want to take a chance, you know, not being able to visit family members who might be in care facilities. I want to thank all of our first responders and hospital personnel. I can imagine the stress that they're through, and oftentimes that they're separated from their families. So I don't want to ramble. He might get mad at me, but I also want to say the vice mayor lost his mother this week, and she was one of the classiest, most lovely ladies I've ever met in my entire life.
You're here.
And she was a great mother, I know, and she'll be missed. But, you know, I want to recognize her because we often recognize people in the community that have really made a difference. So, downtown Clearwater Holiday Extravaganza. From now through December 23rd, downtown Clearwater will celebrate the city's annual holiday extravaganza. The city will be reimagining events, obviously, to allow for social distancing, and will be requiring masks for attendees. Please keep safe distance and come and enjoy yourself. Flock-a-Yard, if you haven't seen it out there around the city, they're everywhere. December 18th at the DocuPhase building at 1499 Gulf to Bay Boulevard. On the 21st, Community Gardens at Cleveland and Betty Lane North. On the 23rd, Myrtle Avenue and Court Street. December 19th at 6 p.m., Clearwater Jazz Holiday presents Wanderlust, an outdoor music event series at Station Square Park, 612 Cleveland Street. Tickets are available for purchase at clearwaterjazz.com. It is a great series. A lot of fun, very safe. December 5th at 6 p.m., well, that's a little late. Registration for certain events will be required. For details on upcoming events, visit downtownclearwater.com/holiday-extravaganza. I'm sure you're all going to remember that. Register for Clearwater holiday camps. Registration for winter holiday camps at Clearwater Parks and Recreation Facilities is underway. Holiday camps are Session 1, December 21st through the 24th, No Camp December 25th, and Session 2, December 28th to the 31st, No Camp January 1st, starting at $72 per session. Camp hours vary at each location. Visit myclearwaterparks.com for more information. Santa Claus is coming to town. Santa Claus is trading in his bright red sleigh for a bright red fire truck as he prepares to swing by a variety of Santa Claus lanes around the city of Clearwater. Santa will be making appearances around town December 17th and 18th from 6 to 8 p.m. We're not a part of that tonight. The following are the city's recreation centers closest to the neighborhoods that Santa will visit. Tonight was Morningside Recreation Center Complex on Hard Boulevard, the Long Center neighborhood at 1501 Belcher Road, and the Countryside Rec Center neighborhood, 2640 Sable Spring Drive. Tomorrow night will be Clearwater Beach Rec Center neighborhood, 69 Bay Esplanade, the North Greenwood Rec Center neighborhood, 900 North MLK Jr. Avenue, the Ross Norton Recreation Center neighborhood, 1426 South MLK Jr. Avenue. City offices will be closed for Christmas and New Year's holidays. City of Clearwater offices, centers, libraries, that's redundant. So I apologize for that. I do want to thank Mr. Horn and Miss Aiken as well for leading through this tough time. A majority of the new council is always a little bit difficult too. I want to thank my fellow council members as, you know, we're growing closer, and it was really weird to start out with Zoom. And this isn't normal, Councilmember Bunker. And I'll go so far as to say it sucks, which probably shouldn't be said on TV, but it's almost 9 o'clock. So kids should be in bed anyway, doggone it. And with that, I want to wish you all a very happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a great and safe New Year. God bless you all. We are adjourned.